see here, I will share my screen. Okay. I think you can all see the login page. Great. So as was mentioned, we are in a sense relaunching Learn24 with our new user interface. And on the inside, we are in the process of making a number of system improvements. So this is, I think, one step of a multi-step process to improve the entire system. So if you've been logging in since we launched the new UI, of course you're at the same URL, but this landing page is different. I'm going to log in here with our demo agency account that we use for testing and training. Go ahead. So when each of you log in, this is the configuration that you should be seeing, where you land on your organization profile, and it's just a very simple form with all the background that the Learn24 asks for about your agency. And I forget, did you mention we should take questions now or hold them? I think I didn't quite hear that. Yeah.
It's up to you, whatever is most convenient for you. I was thinking that we probably could hold them for a little bit, and that way I'm sure you're going to go over some of the things that they might, or it's possible that you can go over some of the things that they might ask. And so, but once again, it's up to you. This is your show. We're just operating today.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. It's nice to take questions in real time, but as we know, if there's too many, we won't get through the presentation. So yeah, let's hold them, and then Navdeep will help collect everything so we can double back. So that'll help me go a little quicker. So here, and I assume all of you are either have used this before or are new. For those who've used it, there's not a lot for me to explain. For any of those who are new, there's probably quite a bit of information here that you might have questions about. So again, we'll just have you hold those, and there'll be plenty of chances after this training for us to follow up with you to explain any item that's not clear. So here we are with the organization profile. It's a pretty straightforward form. On the left menu below this are what we call the organization sites, and these are the site locations that have been assigned to you for the current year. You'll notice there's this drop down, and the way the system works is that year to year, you may have different sites that you're working at or that are being monitored by Learn24. So in concept, if you were to click back to last year, this site list can be different. So that's just, if you're wondering what this drop down is, it is to reflect the list of sites that you had in that fiscal year. And so right now we're defaulting to our 22-23 year. And if this list needs to be adjusted to reflect what your actual sites for this year, you would let your Learn24 grant manager know, and then we would make that change here. Drilling into any one of these site locations is just a matter of clicking here. And now you can see the left menu changed. So we still have the navigation back to your org profile and your list of sites, but below this left menu line are all the items that are needed to manage the information at this particular site location. So you can see it brings up the site profile where we have site-specific information, the site director, the location of the site. And here you can see we've loaded all of the street addresses in the district. So updating this is just picking from one that already exists, and so it makes it a little simpler for you. And then there are questions that Learn24 would want to know about the site location itself. You can see that here. Are there costs? Is it accessible? Is there transportation? So this is all here for you to fill in. Below the site, we have our main containers here for what you'll be tracking, and the first, of course, is participants. And clicking that brings up the list. This would be everybody that's active at the site currently, And this is the environment where you'll browse whoever you've already registered or add somebody new. And I'll go through the sequence real quickly of adding someone new. So if you have a new youth attending your program at this site, you'd hit add. I'll just type this in real quickly so we can get beyond this. So there's some details here. The minimum that we need at the top is the name and the date of birth and the upload ID, so that when you add this, the system will check for a duplicate, and if we see any existing record that has either a matching combination of first name, last name, date of birth, or a matching participant ID, we're going to flag the record as being a potential duplicate and essentially ask you to confirm whether you really do want to add this as a new youth or whether you should be selecting from an already registered youth. I'll just fill in some of the rest of this. The rest of this is not required at this stage. So actually I'm going to leave this empty, but you can see here, well, there's some, maybe we should restrict this. So Garb, these are some of the things we probably still should talk through, is whether it's valid to have any other state other than the district and so forth. I'll just fill in some of this here so I can go to the add stage. And you can see, because the system did not find a matching name and date of birth or a matching participant ID, it allowed for that new record to be created. And this is the basic intake record that we have for you. This is a place where we are revising and doing additional work to develop the record. You can see there is this basic required data. And then if you scroll down, there are demographics and so forth that are being requested, but the items to do will be to organize these to determine exactly what's required and what's not. And that's, so for now, we're asking you to fill in what you have here, but in a revision that will be probably available pretty soon, we're going to make clear which of these we're going to reorganize this to make sure which is absolutely required and which are optional. So that's the simple form here. There's another one for contact information. And this is where, if you want, you can enter, and this one is more for your use, which is to indicate who the contacts are for the youth. And so one way to approach the system is that it's collecting sort of core required data that Learn24 needs for its reporting, tracking, but it's also a system that you can use if you're not already using another software system to track your youth and take attendance. This is available to you as your primary system for that, and that's why we add these pages here, is that if you decide to use this for your main tracking, there's additional pages that will collect data that you probably want to be storing. I know I said we'd hold questions at the end, but I think maybe this would be a good point just to pause and take any questions up until now.
Would you like me to read the ones in the chat?
Yep.
Okay. So we can start with, should the participant ID correlate with the student ID number?
Good question. No, that it can if you want it to, but there's no, that number is for you to define. So if whatever IDs you have on your youth that you'd like to put in and consistently use, that's the ID that you should be entering.
Perfect. That was the only question mark that we have so far.
Great. Got it. Yep. Moving on then, back to participants. So you can see this list is searchable by name. We probably will be adding search filters here to allow you to search by other criteria, but for right now, it's just a simple name search. Under this item, you'll also see staff, and this is where Learn24 gets a little complicated, which is that you have a staff module where at the agency level, you're going to register all of your staff for verification background check reasons. This idea of staff at the site level is not where you would do all that work. You can see the information here about the staff is minimal. So I'll when I present to you the agency staff module, we'll show how these staff records are created. And at that level, they can be assigned to your sites. But when you're at the site level, the only thing that you're going to see are the staff that you've assigned to the site from the central tool. And when you click into staff, you're going to see very little information about them. And that's on purpose because at the site level, these users really, of course, shouldn't be seeing the full information on each staff that was used for background check and verification. So this is just the essential data that can be shared with the site level users. It's here. Moving down then to programs. This is where you can set up your activities, and this can happen in different formats. The primary one is what we're calling programs and camps, and that's anything that you're conducting in a group setting, like classes or anything where there's an enrolled group of individuals and a schedule of dates that everybody shares. That's a class. Up here, one-on-one, this is for things like mentoring and tutoring, where there's less structure. It's more, an individual staff may meet with an individual youth at any time, and you want to document what happened when they did meet, for example, tutoring, mentoring. So we have a different module for that type of services. And lastly, there's the events module, which is for documenting events where you're not going to take attendance by name. So you'll create the event and say 20 people attended, but the module doesn't require you to enroll the individuals by name. It's designed to, again, have like a summary attendance concept. With that, I'll just go through these real quick. So I'll click on one that exists before I create one. So here we're going to dive into a group activity, and you can see all of the data that's collected on a group. It's quite deep. And now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and just create one of these to show you the workflow. So here, if I need to add one, just clicking add here. And the whole sequence of questions appears for adding a program. I'm going to type in all this, but I'm going to go about it a bit. So there's quite a bit here, and one of the main reasons there's so much here is that, as you know, this data is also made public on the Learn24 website through their program locator. And I could pull that up if you're not familiar with it, but essentially many of these questions have to do with data that's needed for the program locator. And so if I scroll down, this is required as to whether you actually want this included. So if you say no, you'll fill all this out, but the activity will not appear to the public as a searchable, item. But if you say yes, then you would know that this is going to be published on the Learn24 website. And because you're saying yes, the form adjusts to ask additional questions that we need for that public display. And in particular, we need, that display has to have a begin and end time, a begin and end date and time. This is where it gets a little complicated. So when you later on, when you schedule out this activity, you'll say, okay, it's Monday and Wednesday from 3 to 5 in the afternoon, but in that schedule is what you'll use for taking attendance. But often the kind of attendance-driven schedule is slightly different than the schedule that you want to display to the public in the Finder, which is why if you're going to put it on the Finder, we ask you to enter this information for use on the program Finder. So you say, so essentially it's saying, regardless of the actual attendance schedule that I'm going to create, I want the public to see this as the begin and end dates and the begin and end times. And I hope that's not too confusing, but that's why this is here, is to be able to control exactly what the public sees around the schedule. Same thing, days of the week. This is just letting the public know when this occurs. And a lot of this is self-explanatory. And if it's going to be in the locator, the system is going to, it's, for these ones that have stars on them, these are the ones you have to answer to proceed from this page. So a primary focus area, these were defined by Learn24 as sort of the top level content buckets for your activities. And then based on that, you would be selecting here subtopics that are going to be covered, and you can pick up to 3. And I think if I pick 4, when I go to save, it's going to tell me to revise to only pick 3. And then just sorry for all the scrolling, but there's just a lot of extra data that we ask for about the activity so that it can also be displayed on the locator. Just all this information. If you imagine a parent visiting that locator and trying to understand what this activity is, all this extra tagging is going to be somewhat helpful for them. I'll just go, and the rest of this is optional. So now that I've filled in everything that's required, I'm going to just go ahead and save and return here. Oh, and obviously I missed a few things that are required. So here we go. So you are, if it's going to go in the locator, you are required to put in a description, which can be anything up to 500. So we'll actually add, I think we need to add a couple required indicators here. So grades is required, and the response on the registration is required. Something like that. Maybe here you would put a URL to wherever it is that you send people to registered. I think then there had to be at least a couple grade level selections. So now that I've done that, I'm going to scroll back up to the top, hit save and enter the registration piece correctly. Maybe we have a bug here. We didn't completely debug this particular release, or are you seeing where you need to enter that registration piece? Oh, here, I'm sorry.
Right there. Okay.
Just too many things on the screen. That's part of the problem. Okay, thanks for being patient while I look for that. Hit that save and return. And now today's sample group is showing up in the list as your newly created activity. And if you need to edit any of the information we just entered, it's just a matter of clicking on that one again and coming back here. Now in any of these sections, if you hit this edit icon here, the section will open and you'll be able to make whatever changes you want, save and return, and you'll come back to the activity itself. I'm going to pause there to see if there's any questions in the question box. Navdeep, no questions?
No questions.
Okay. So now that you've set up your group and have given it a name, today's sample group, it could, this will be whatever you name the activity. The next step, there's 3 more steps. One is to create a schedule for the activity, then to enroll youth, and then to take daily attendance. So here, right below, you'll see this little schedule piece. So to create your schedule, and actually we're gonna put the schedule up in a tab here, so it's clear the 3 steps, info, schedule, we'll add that. But in any case, the scheduling for now is right here. You'd click on that and it'll bring up our scheduling tool where it's gonna prompt you to add dates. And so you'll hit this add dates button. There's just a little wizard that it walks through that says, are you adding a single or multiple dates to your calendar? Typically, you're going to be setting up multiple dates. We'll say this is going to start December 1 and go through a few months. And then you'll indicate what days of the week this is going to happen on. And as you do that, the begin and end times for those days show up. And so you would just say on Mondays it's 3 to 5, and on Wednesdays it's probably 3 to 5, and this could be 4 to 5 or something. So by queuing this up, you're ready to create the schedule, and it's just a matter of clicking Add Dates, which will render out your calendar. This is very flexible, so even though you've created this, you can delete dates, you can modify begin and end times if you want. The system does track everything by time. There's not a lot of reporting by time, but in the background, all activities are kind of tracked by the duration. So here, if you needed to delete some dates, you can come here and check them and delete them. If you want to extend the schedule or add some other dates, it's just a matter of coming back to add dates. You'll get the same interface, but whatever you do here is going to essentially add dates to your schedule. So it's a pretty, this is flexible enough to really reflect any schedule that you need to reflect. And in fact, if you want to edit the begin and end time on a day, it's just a matter of clicking the time icon, and it's showing it's currently for this day 4 to 5. But if you need to, adjust that schedule, all that kind of granularity is here. So now this, starts at 4:30. So once the schedule's done for the initial setup, you can come back here and you'll see on this landing program info page a summary of the calendar that you just created. And I'll pause there for a second to see, Navdeep, if there's any questions on that.
Nope, no questions.
Pretty straightforward.
If there is questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will let Mark know.
Yep. Or at the end, we'll double back to some. Great. Okay. So once the schedule's created, the next 2 steps are to enroll the youth and take attendance. So at the top here, you click on that enrollment link. Nobody here. To enroll, click the enroll button. And the system, this behavior is a little different than the old system. In the past, you would have been asked to type in the name of the person you want to enroll. In the new system, we're just going to present everybody who's active within your site so that you don't have to type the name. And the thing that should be easier here is that all you need to do now is start clicking off on names. And once you've done that, you just scroll to the bottom and hit proceed. And the system says, okay, you've selected 4 individuals that are registered to your site. The activity was supposed to start on the 1st, but actually the first day in the schedule is the 2nd. It's asking, is everyone here going to start on the first day of the activity? And if yes, you leave it alone and hit proceed. But if you're using this tool to enroll someone who may have started, a month after the activity started, you can come in here and modify the enroll date to be something different. And what it'll do is it'll note that they enrolled late, and it'll also trim the attendance records. So any individual that enrolls later, they won't have attendance records for that first period, and that just keeps your attendance records nice and tidy. So that's why we asked for the enrollment date, so you can adjust. The next thing would be to hit proceed, and the system now will do a duplicate check, or a scheduling conflict check. I'm sorry. So if any of these individuals is enrolled in an activity that has a schedule that conflicts with the one we've just set up, you'll be notified here. And in fact, it's telling us that Joe Brown is already enrolled in after school dance, and there are 9 days in this group calendar that conflict with his schedule in after school dance. And at this point, what you can do is, if you hit proceed, Joe Brown is not going to be enrolled in this activity. But if you want to ignore the conflict, you can click here and hit proceed, and that will put Joe into this activity even though there is a conflict. And this little instruction at the top is stating just that. So I'm going to say, yep, allow Joe to be cross-enrolled. It's all right. So I click his name, hit proceed, and now the system's just confirming who you just enrolled into your activity. And now you can either look at your total enrollment list, or go back and enroll more people, or just go back to the general info page. So I'm going to go back to the enrollment list here, which is showing those 4. But now, of course, I can over time, if I want to enroll more youth, it's just a matter of clicking enroll. This list will filter out anybody who's already enrolled. So I'll just enroll 2 more, scroll to the bottom, confirm the start dates. And 1 more has a conflict checked. I'll say it doesn't matter, enroll this person anyway, proceed, the confirmation page. And now going to the enrollment list, we see all 6 people that I enrolled through those 2 enrollment sets.
Okay, Mark, there is one question. I'm just going to go ahead and ask that.
Yep.
What is the best course of action in an event that the student's date of birth and or grade information were not or have not been obtained yet?
So this is back here when you're adding a participant, and we require the date of birth. You can always make up an ID if you don't actually have them, and in fact, the system, if you really make it simple, if you want us to create an ID, you can hit this auto generate. But that's an interesting question. I know at the Learn24 level, should they be entered into the system if they don't have a date of birth yet, or should? I mean, we know that some
Gaurav?
people will enter an obviously inaccurate date of birth, like 1/1, 1900 or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
which will pass validation, but be clear to everyone that that's not a real date of birth. We could talk about that internally. There is the option of saying having a field that says date of birth not yet available, and if you click that, we would allow you to continue without the date of birth. We'll still do a duplicate check on the first and last name, but those records will be flagged essentially in the background as missing that key piece of data.
I believe, Mark, that that is information that Gaurav also needs for other information as well. But Gaurav would have to answer that. I'm not positive.
Yeah, I think so if we're talking about the fields that aren't required, the address through ward fields, I would say definitely enter them if you can. I would actually really strongly encourage it, because frequently we have to go back and ask for that sort of information, and it's hard to enter later on. So even though it's not explicitly required, I would very very strongly encourage that all of this get filled out.
But what about the field for date of birth, which is a required field? What if they do not yet have a date of birth for that youth?
Oh, in that case, what I've advised in the past and what you can do is put an easy placeholder date, something that, well, that you'll easily see, but also that we'll easily see as, and keep it consistent for your organization. So, just pick, for example, January 11th, 2011. So it's just all ones. That's just one example. Or maybe November. So it's all ones that way. And that way, it's easy for you to see and for us to see that these are placeholder dates. But again, like I said, I would do whatever you can to make sure that it's entered correctly from the beginning. But if not, then a placeholder date is fine.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll move back here to these activities. Again, we're working on this sample group that we created. And we've set up the description, all this extra data, course enrollment. That's enrolled. And so the last piece then is to start taking attendance. We have this attendance link at the top, and it's going to show by default, it shows every day that is, before today's date, and which is also empty. So the design here is to try to only show you the rows that you should actually be working on. So you can see it's empty through today is what it shows by default. But you have these other options to see your full schedule. So if for some reason you want to see every day, just use this drop down. all dates, so forth. So here, entering attendance for these dates is just a matter of clicking on a day, and it brings up the new attendance sheet. So we can see it's for the group, it's for the day, and entering attendance just as a matter of using these little buttons here to mark them present or absent. And there's these little cheat tools here. So if it's quicker to say all present and come back and just mark the one absent, that's also a valid way of doing things. I should point out that there is a way to print this out, and this is probably one area where the pop-up is blocked for me. Let me make sure I unblock it. Oh, and I think the pop-up's in an alternate window here. Let's see here. May not be able to show this to you unless oh, there it is. Now it's popping up. Navdeep, are you seeing the pop-up window in Teams?
I am not. I'm just seeing your attendance window.
Okay, I'm gonna have to switch it. Each one of these environments works a little differently. So let me stop sharing and reshare the pop-up window.
Okay.
So I think you can see that now.
There we go.
And so just so you know, for every day of attendance, the system has a printable PDF record that you could use. So the workflow typically is, instructors will generate these and print them out at the beginning of the week and put them on clipboards, or you can generate them for your staff and email them out. But essentially it's, paper support for your attendance taking, where if you were to print these, it's the name, the date, and present, absent. I had marked in that, so you already see it, but typically this would be empty. And there's some things like for signature and notes, those are optional, but if that supports your workflow of having signatures here, it's great. This is one area where we often customize for your requirements. So if Learn24 comes back and says, yes, we do need these paper, we need this documentation on paper, and there's certain things that have to be here, we'll be customizing this for your use. Great. So unless there's any questions, I'll reshare my other tab. So again, that's just under the print icon here if you want. So it's this, if you're running through a number of attendance dates, now that I'm done here, you can just click this forward button. It's going to move from Friday to the next Monday. And if, again, it should be pretty quick to enter attendance just by going through these steps and hitting forward to go to your next attendance date. Once you're done, you can hit save and return, and you can see that the system's indicating that these 2 days already have attendance and this one is still missing attendance. Not sure. I don't think we've tested this one, but no. So one thing to note is that you saw on the PDF there's a barcode, and this system can be configured to allow you to barcode your attendance in. Gaurav, I think we'll need to talk through if that's if that's useful to the group, then we can go through the extra steps of making sure all the barcode scanning capabilities are available. So there it is. We've created the group activity, enrolled youth. We've scheduled it and marked attendance, and that's basic requirement for documenting your group-based activities. Any questions before I move on?
There are a few questions. Would you like me to say those right now?
Oh, go ahead. If that's
Okay, so the first question is, if a new site location is added during the program period, what is the process for having that site added into Cityspan?
you would, I think, Gaurav, I think you're the one who's doing it now, or that's communicated to you, and then you have the tools to add the site to the agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Although I think we can talk about maybe a tool to speed that up, but as of now, that is you would talk with your grant manager first, and then I would add the site.
Perfect, thank you. And the second question is, if I missed this, but are we going to be given a username and login, or do we create it, or first time logging in? I believe it's a question related to just having access to the system, Gaurav. If they don't have a login, what the protocol should be.
Yeah, that's the same idea. Will be that I'll create an account for them. So they would go through their grant manager, and then their grant manager would send me the request, and I would create an account so they can access it.
Perfect, thank you. And the next question is, will we be going through the reports tab?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that'll come up in a
Those are
second.
questions right now, Mark. So you can continue.
So going back to the programs, that was workflow for everything that's in a group setting. I just want to quickly look at the one-on-one and the events. So one-on-one, as I mentioned, is for things like tutoring and mentoring. When I click into one, you can add one. So the sequence for adding and managing is very much like programs and camps. You're going to add, and when you do, it's going to show you that big page to indicate everything about the programming. But once it's been added, and I'll just use an existing one here, the steps of scheduling, enrolling, and attending are different. So rather than there be you don't create a schedule like you do with the groups. All there is an attendance tab, and the way this works is as you need to record attendance for this one-on-one, you're going to come here to attendance, hit the add button, and it's a simple page that says who's the participant. All your active participants are going to be here. Who's the staff person? And so you would have already assigned, I should have shown that, but there's a step where you're going to assign staff to this activity, and these are the 3 that would have been assigned. And then it's just an issue saying, okay, on what date was this provided? How many hours and minutes? And that's it. If you want to add notes, you can, but by entering that data, you can hit save and return, and you can see now right here at the bottom the attendance records recorded. You can come back and edit it if you need to. And really at that point, all you can do is modify the date and the time. But it's a very simple process for adding these one-on-one attendance records. And then later, if you want to just sort of sort through this to look at, who did Tim Allen work with, it's just a matter of typing that staff name. You can see all of their one-on-one records, and the same thing if you wanted to isolate on a participant, they're all here and you could do that isolation as well. And yep, I think this is gonna.
There's one question about the one-on-one is, can this mentoring information be added in bulk, or is it just one at a time?
It's one at a time. Yep. So we'll talk about bulk a little later. So we have implemented upload tools, and so that's one way to think about bulk. If there's a need to bulk enter this, there's maybe some interfaces here that we could look into, but right now this is just one at a time. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you,
Any
Mark.
other questions on that? Okay, so that is entering one-on-one. And then lastly, the events, which is on the right here. Same interface. When you add one, it's a much more limited set of things. So today's event here, and then like I mentioned, the whole point of the event is that you're entering attendance in bulk. So I'll say 20 people attended, save and return. And now here's today's event. Yep, we do, let's see. Actually, unfortunately, there is a little bit of additional configuration in this. when we moved into the new UI, there was a lot of migration of functionality, and I got to be honest that I'm looking at this right now and seeing that there's a little bit of work to be done on this. So we'll have to give you some additional instructions on how to set the rest of this up. But the idea is that, of course, that this is for documenting something that happened without entering the names of who attended. So with that, those are the main modules for documenting your program activities. And if there aren't any questions, I'll move on to some of the reporting.
There is another question, but it's related to the SEO.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, will we be discussing SEO in this meeting? How can students access the links, etc.?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's look at that here. So now we're going to go into the reporting environment, site reports. And at the bottom, you can see there's this SEO administration link. And so for those of you who've used Learn24 in the past, we had a different way of administering the SEOs. If you remember, your staff had to log in and sit down and like pull up the student's name and kind of set up the survey, and then the design was for the student to then sit down in front of the computer, fill it out, and hit save. So we've left that behind. That was cumbersome for many reasons. And we have this new way of having the youth fill in their own SEOs. And just for those of you who may be a little bit new, the SEO is kind of interesting in that one of the principles is that the results are confidential, so that your organization, your users should not be able to view the student responses because they are essentially providing feedback on their experience within your group. And the reporting concept around the SEO is that Learn24 is going to take the student responses and aggregate them so that they're not identifiable to a student, but to return to you like an aggregate picture of how your youth are responding to the SEO questions. So the administration, though, starts with just visiting the reports page and clicking on this link here. And you're saying, give me SEOs for everyone who participated within a certain date range. And also, and if not, well, within the date range, and also if you want to restrict by them only being in certain activities, you can. But if I type in this here, it's going to essentially pull back, do this correctly, everybody who attended in the demo site within the last, I guess, 2 years is what I'm asking for here. But in reality, Core, if you have guidelines as to what intervals they should be served at, but essentially this is going to generate SEO links, a file. Oh, look at that. I don't know what. Oh, maybe this wasn't completely debugged before we launched here. Apologies for that. Let me just pick another date range. Maybe that was part of it. Do one more setup. So we'll obviously get back and figure out what has to be untangled here. No. So apologies for not having this quite ready, but for those of you who may know, this should return a spreadsheet which would have all of the youth's names listed, and in columns next to their names would be a link for the SEO pre and the SEO post. And the design is that you would then use that spreadsheet to somehow distribute those links to the youth. So that's the kind of the design here, is that we don't know the best way for you to deliver those links to the youth. Sometimes it's, maybe they have you have a phone number that you can text them to, or maybe they're going to sit down in a class and you're just going to sort of, paste it into the browser. But however the student gets the link, when they click on it, it's going to open up the SEO instrument, and and it'll be identified to that youth, and they'll be able to click through. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to. I'd have to pause this for a second to go grab those links. And unless Navdeep, you might have working links that we can use for the training.
At the moment for SEO, we do not, but we'll get that up and running.
Yep. So we may have to, I mean, we may have to set up another training just to look at the SEO workflow, but that's the intended workflow. Any questions or comments on that? I think some of you have been through that workflow already in the old system. So if it, okay, so if not, we'll keep on and get back to you with some either a separate little training video or some workflow that explains how this works from beginning to end. The rest of these reports are, there's not many here. We have a much larger panel of stock reports that I think we'll be deploying as we know more about what reporting would be useful to you. But the ones that we have shared at this point at the top are what we call attendance taking tools. So these are 3 different ways to generate paper PDFs that you're going to use to take attendance. And we looked at that single sheet, but there, for example, there's another way of taking attendance, which is to say, you know, starting today, I'd like attendance sheets for these activities that are in the future, and I'd like my sheets to have 10 days per row. So what I'm going to do is basically key this in and generate an attendance sheet for the activity I just created today. You could create them for all the activities if you want in one PDF, but we'll just generate one here to start so you can see what this looks like. So this is and I think I'll need to switch my screen here. So if you can see my screen, this assuming it's helpful for you to have printed paper attendance sheets for your activities. By running that report, you can return this one, which is for the activity that we created. This is, every youth name, but space to mark whether they attended for 10 days. So it's a very compact paper attendance sheet for you to use. And so you have a choice. You can use this one, or you can use the single day sheet that has room for signatures and more detail. But if you want a very dense one, this one is designed to do that. So again, let me know if there's any questions, but we'll just.
No, I'm just seeing about the COI. That was the last question.
Let's see here. You can see the system screen now, right?
Yes, I can.
Yep, okay. So there's, feel free to try these different ones. We saw the single day. The benefit here is that when we ran the single day paper sheet before, it was for the one activity and the one day we were on. This one would let you enter a date and print out all of the activities for that date that are occurring. So if your workflow is in the morning, I need all my attendance sheets for today, this tool will print every activity in one PDF so that you don't have to run them one at a time. Then moving down, there are other reports that are more for site management, which is just to show attendance by service is going to show all of your scheduled services and what the attendance patterns are. So I'll just run that one real quick. So all of these are driven by a date range. So if I go for maybe even all of 22, any date range you want. So if I can just type this correctly. It's basically saying give me all of the services that I ran during this time range and tell me who was enrolled and what the attendance patterns look like. So if I hit generate here, you can see, I think, Navdeep, can you see this or no? I got to switch.
Yes, I'm seeing the report.
Okay, this is the report. It's just saying within that date range, these are the activities that you set up, and these are all the individuals that you enrolled. And for all the individuals, these were their attendance patterns. This is demo data, so there's not much entered attendance, but this is just a quick way for you to look across all your programs to see what you've scheduled and what the attendance looks like. And these other ones that we have here, similar concepts. This would be by participant. So if you have a need to look at your participation, you know, I'll do the same thing here. I'll just type in. There's some options here. I'm going to just go with the default settings, but essentially this is going to list out every youth that was in your programming during that date range. It's going to show what groups they were in and what their attendance patterns were. So this is good if a parent calls and says, I want to confirm, you know, what my youth has been doing in your program, this sheet would do it. Or if you're in a school and, you know, teachers or anyone is asking for detail on any one youth, this is a great place to see it all together. So there aren't too many reports here. There's quite a few more that we have available, and so over the next few months, we'll be working with the Learn24 team to look at all of the available site level reports and figure out which ones we're going to add here that could be useful for you. There's this extra left menu called Custom Reports, and this gets into it. So behind the scenes on this system, there's a data warehouse, and every night we copy all of the data into the warehouse. And this environment is showing reports that are written against the data warehouse. And honestly, I would be hesitant to demo these until we've taken a closer look at the way they're appearing for this year. So Gaurav, if it's okay, what I'm suggesting is that we essentially schedule a separate training to go through these reports, or we can record a training demo that runs each one and explains what's going on in each one. But I think that there's too many for right now. And
Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree too. And we are past time right now on this meeting, so I don't want to hold our grantees too much later because they may have other things. But I will let you guys decide that right now.
we're happy to schedule follow-up trainings on the more detailed topics. And so yeah, if we're at time, we should wrap up and schedule additional trainings to cover all the other topics. So.
I agree. I think that we can schedule another one. We do have these office hours, I think once a month, but we could try and schedule reports maybe a little earlier than that.
Yep. And I know a lot of you are probably interested in this upload left menu, so we'll definitely want to get a training around how you can be uploading your participants and attendance. I think that's an important topic. So. Great. So if that's it, we'll conclude the training. Thank you all for attending. And like I said, this is a little bit of a work in progress as well. We're along with the new UI, we're trying to revisit and improve on features across it. So there'll be additional announcements that we'll be making in more trainings.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you so much for coming in and providing so much content. As always.